All right, what we're going to be doing today is, if you can tell, bumper's not straight there. This customer bought this vehicle from a dealership like this. Basically what happened was previous customer put too much of an aggressive offset onto the tires, causing rubbing issues. So they poorly spaced out the bumper. We'll be fixing that today. Down in the wheel well, you see that they've cut a portion of it out. We're gonna try to clean that up, make it look better. Unfortunately, down in there, let me grab my light real quick. If you look, they've cut or have removed both front and rear crash bars. What I like to do is actually flip them around, so at least we don't have those to deal with today. But it's going to be going up 4 inches, so that way these wheels and tires don't rub. Spacing out the bumper properly should be pretty straightforward. First things first is we're going to sort out the bumper issue. What we need to do is remove this. This has got to all come off. Behind there are the nuts we need to get to. And then we're going to pull this bumper and basically see what is going on, why there's this uneven gap, almost like the bumper is tilted. One thing that happens a lot with these Fords when you're removing this front plastic piece is you get these little tiny clips stuck in here. You can actually take a pair of needle nose. If you get it just right, you can get it started. It's kind of a two-hand process and it'll come right out. Right there are your 2 bumper bolts. Basically going to take a 21, we're going to pull them off and see what's kind of going on back behind here. Take you guys up under here with me. If you look right kind of where that light's hidden, it's going to be the last bumper bolt we need. And yes, there is a gap at the bottom of it, so we're going to pull that off and see how they decided to space this out. Typically, if you space your bumper, you want to do it both at the bottom and the top. It looks like they just did it at the bottom. This is why bumper's doing this back towards the wheel. Trying to get this bumper off. This side's lower bolt spinning. So if you look down in there, you can see the tab that holds the bumper on. There's no tab in there. Let's get started on this lift. We're gonna remove the wheel, tire, and then basically start tearing down the front suspension on both sides. Next thing I'm gonna do is look over all this. Obviously not happy with the quality of work done here. We're back here in the wheel well of the people who basically did this before me. So I'm gonna look over everything just to make sure we're all good in here, and I'm not gonna, run into any problems, or if I do, I can make the customer aware of them and we can fix it while we're in here. Took off the rotor, hung the caliper. We're going to remove the ABS wire. Upper ball joint's been taken off. Tie rod in. And we pull the lower ball joint here, knock the knuckle off, pull the lower arm strut. This side's pretty much torn down. Trick I do to keep this knuckle from falling off on me is I leave the nut just basically finger tight on there. So that way, when I hit it straight back here with the hammer, and this knuckle comes free, it doesn't have the chance of falling completely off the vehicle. Got this side torn down. We're gonna go tear down the next side. Once the other side's torn down, we're gonna come under here, remove cross member, pull diff, undo drive shaft, all that good stuff. Got this other side torn down. Next few steps, and what we're gonna be doing is pulling the sway bar off, taking this cross member out, disconnecting the drive shaft, and then we will be working on the diff. All right, cross member's out, sway bar is off, and the drive shaft has been pulled down. We're gonna get a couple bolts undone. There's one here on the diff. If you peek up in there, that right there needs to come off. And then the other one is right back, sorry about all this, right back here. Got the diff out of the vehicle. Not too difficult. Two things to keep in mind is, well, first thing, this breather tube, make sure you get that before you start pulling on it too hard. And then the other thing is I always do, is trim a little bit off the end of this. You're gonna end up trimming it right around in this area where you can already see the line. You're gonna be trimming it back to there to allow clearance for you to drop the diff down for the lift. And then we're gonna install the mounts to the differential and get them up where they go, where they came out of the frame, right here and over here. It's pretty straightforward. These are gonna be our next step. We're gonna be putting these right on there. And one will go here, and then obviously one in the rear. Keep in mind, the one in the rear looks a little bit different. We got our templates taped up there. Basically all we're gonna do is take our paint pen, draw along the template. Sorry, long template like so. Gives us our cutting line. Always mark a little bit up there. And then same thing for back over here. Connect your dots. There's that. Put you down so that way I can see what I'm doing. Get this marked up and we'll get it cut off. All right, I went ahead and well, not reattached, but went ahead and attached the sway bar drop bracket. The reason why I did that is we're actually going to be running a bolt through that bracket in there when I'm wiggling all the way out and through here, through the cross member. So if you go ahead and hang these, it makes life a little bit easier to get everything kind of into place. All right, rear cross member is in. Pretty straightforward. Bolts run through, sway bar bracket out towards the CV axle. So that way, if you ever need to get it off, you can. Good example of why is you're not going to be able to slide the bolt out towards the front of the vehicle if the CV axle's in here. There won't be any interference or anything like that. Just little things like that can make all the difference. Next thing we're going to be doing, I'm not sure if you guys can see, is we're going to be running a bolt through here, through that little hole, and then that'll finalize getting the diff mounted into place. When we do that, we can tighten all of the other diff bolts all around. The ones we pulled earlier, the lower ones. Okay, so I lied. I was going through the box of stuff. I do need to mount one more bracket after I get that bolt on, and it goes essentially through that diff bolt through the frame, and that'll also help secure the diff. Now that we've got front cross member in, and then I went ahead and threw in the customer's new CV axle that they approved because the old one was ripped. We're gonna put in the lower control arms. When those go in, it's gonna be on to tightening all the cross members in, putting the skid plate on. What I gotta do next for the lift over here on the front end is I have to swap the old knuckle out for a new one because this portion is gonna be taller, and then we're gonna replace the level kit spacer with the 4-inch spacer. Lock tight your bolts. Inside, you'll see these teeth up in here, and what you want to make sure you do is when you drop this on there, you want to make sure those teeth are aligned because you can rotate this after the fact. Once you do that, line up your holes, grab your bolt. Always start these by hand. There's that. Now we just do that times 2, and we'll have the knuckles knocked out. All right, ended up being a 15. With the level kit, sometimes those top nuts get changed out. But we should be able to reuse these. All right, so that's off. Let's go install our studs on my messy workbench. Just going through and witness marking or the CYA mark all the bolts. ABS sensors in, backing plate's been put on. You got the hub nut, CV axle, all that stuff's where it should be. Upper ball joint, lower, all that's been witness marked and tightened. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna install the brake line extension bracket. It mounts over here where it used to go, and then what this is gonna do is essentially drop all of this down. So that way we have the extension and we're not pulling anything or breaking anything. Make sure, move it back and forth, that nothing's gonna pull or whatever at full droop, because that's the worst case scenario. And just, it's hard to do one-handed. But yeah, essentially that. Once when you know everything's good, ready to go, snap our tie rod down in, throw on the nut, and that is pretty much it beyond the sway bar. Alright, skid plates on. Sway bars tight and installed. And obviously we'll pull any sort of old remaining skid plate stuff off so he doesn't get rattles and whatnot. You guys don't need to see that. So we will be on to the rear. This should be pretty straightforward and very simple when it comes to lifting rear ends. Because on this one thing we have going for us is the electronic parking brake. Makes life a lot easier. Brake line bracket, new shocks, U-bolts and blocks, and that'll be about it. First things first, we're gonna remove the shock. Next step is that bracket right there. We're gonna be putting a drop bracket on it. Pretty straightforward, similar to the front. We'll need appears to be a 10 millimeter to get that off. And then right here on top of the bump stop extension is the bracket we're going to be installing. We're going to do this before we drop the axle, so that way we don't overextend any brake lines or harnesses or anything. Brake line brackets installed. Went ahead through blocking this side. We're going to do the same thing on this side. It's just 421 millimeter nuts. Pull that off, drop your block out, put the new one in, new U-bolts. Straightforward. Put the shocks in, and then we're all done with the rear. Throw the front wheels on, take it to alignment. That'll wrap up this rough country 4-inch on this Ford.